And it looks like things are starting for us. Let's just make sure everything is looking pretty. Okay. Alrighty, it looks like we are live. Okay, oops, and there we go. All right, everyone, welcome to another episode of Musician Monday. I'm Corey with the Grand Rapids Symphony, and joining me today is Assistant Principal Flute Ruth Bylsma. Ruth, how are you?
Great. Thanks, Corey. Good to see you.
Yes, I haven't seen you in quite some time.
I
I know with the office being closed, we don't
Yep,
get to see each other very often.
that's right.
But you're one of the first people I actually met when I started working at the symphony almost 6 years ago, and that was probably through the marketing committee.
Right.
But you just have a very joyful personality. I've always liked that about you.
Well, thank you.
No, no pressure at all for the interview process or anything, right?
Right.
Um, so yeah, let's just start with the conversation, and I want to remind folks that you're more than welcome to ask questions in the chat here. We'll try to answer some questions at the end after we get through our pre written questions. So let's start now. Ruth, how long have you been with the orchestra? I know it's been a few years.
A few. I just completed 46 years with the orchestra.
Wow, 46. What I love too about that is if you think, I mean, really by a long shot, the flute section has the longest, I think, collective like hours on stage of any section in our orchestra.
I think in the country, actually, because Chris and Judy came 2 years after I started, so they have 44 years in. So you add that up, and it's longevity.
But there's something really cool about that though, because I mean, there's a synergy there. There's a relationship, a dynamic that you all just know each other's
Yep.
grooves, and you know
Yep.
how to respect each other, but also to blend so
Yep.
well.
Oh, absolutely. It it's a plus, I think.
I think so too, and all three of you are just so fun and so great and so talented too, for that matter.
Well, it's a
Um,
very nice section to be in. We all respect each other, and we have each other's back. It makes it fun.
I love that. I love that. So with your instrument, the flute, what made you choose to play the flute?
I was destined to play the saxophone
Okay.
because my older brother and sister played that, and so it was being passed down to me. And I wasn't wild about it, but I thought this is what I'm stuck with. Sorry, saxophone players. Nothing wrong with the saxophone. It just wasn't for me. So I did play it the summer before I started fifth grade when I was going to join band. And I just always loved the flute. I loved it. I loved the sound. Um, some of my earliest memories, literally, I was still taking a nap. I must have been like 3 years old. And I would get up and I had my own little record player and I had all these records that I would listen to. You know, a lot of them were like Disney stories and stuff, but they had orchestral music with them. And I just always loved the flute. And so I just really, really didn't want to play the saxophone. Plus, it was really heavy. It was in a really heavy case, and I walked to school. But I just kept begging my parents to rent me a flute, and I think if I couldn't have played the flute, I probably would have just not done music. I mean, I was just so focused. I was not going to be deterred. I remember taking my piggy bank, and I had a bunch of coins, and I brought it to my dad and I said, yeah, I'll pay the rent on this instrument. I have to play the flute. I think that convinced him. So
That is amazing. And when you know when it's like just so in your soul,
yeah.
and there's like no stopping you, that's it's such a powerful feeling. Now this is just a question I always ask everybody, but with your specific flute, is there any unique history to it, or I mean, any cool facts about that?
Um, the flute I play on the most in the orchestra is a gold handmade flute, which I ordered through a private flute maker back at the flute convention. It was in St. Louis. Yes, there is a flute convention. We're all just insane. All get together once a year. Um, but what a great place to find a flute,
Hmm.
because there are so many different flute makers. And this was actually a private flute maker. And my former teacher was with me, so I must have played 200 flutes, and she would sit out, in the room and listen, because it's really hard to tell when you're listening. You need to have somebody's opinion out in the room. Is the flute projecting,
Hmm.
And so she was a great help. And I found this private flute maker, and I found a head joint, just the top part of the flute,
Hmm.
that I really liked. So I bought that, and then I ordered the rest of it, and it has some fancy doodads on it. I thought, if I'm gonna, buy a Cadillac, I want all the special features on it.
Hmm.
And I won't bore you with the details, but it's a pretty cool flute. I really like it. And that's what I play the most. And so the head joint actually says Elkhart, Indiana, which is where he lived. And I thought, well, that's good that I can drive there. After the flute convention, he moved to Halifax,
Oh,
Nova
wow.
Scotia. So the body of my flute says Halifax, and the head joint says Elkhart, Indiana. So it took me almost a year to get it because of his move, but I eventually got it, and I've really, really enjoyed playing it. I still have my silver flute that I had in college, Silver Powell. That's kind of my backup. I have a wooden flute that I love to play when we're doing Bach and things like that. The whole flute section has modern system wooden flute, so they have all the keys. It's like a modern flute, but it's such a sweet sound when we do Bach Festival. Oh, it's just otherworldly to play some of those great flute parts and have these wooden sounds that match. It's really, really fun. I have a wooden piccolo, and I have a brass alto flute, which I get to play a fair amount. There's not every concert, certainly, but I love the big sound of the alto flute, the low. So that's my arsenal.
Well, I love that there's longevity with those instruments. If you take care of them properly, it's not something that you have to replace every, so many years. It's cool that you can have something built for you that if you take care of it properly, it's going to last you as long as you need it to.
Certainly in the flute world, that's true. And I've promised my husband I won't buy any more instruments now. I have enough.
That's good to know. So so being 40 plus years in the orchestra, I'm sure you have a lot of memories that have been so near and dear to you. What are some things that you've got to do with our orchestra that have really stuck out in your head that make you just go, "Wow, that's really great to be part of."
Well, I'm looking back at my very first concert. Teo Alcantara was the music director. Very excitable Spaniard. So I was scared to death. I was 19 years old, afraid of being fired at any moment. He was intense. And our first concert was sort of an opera-based concert, because our guest artist, believe it or not, was Placido Domingo,
Oh, wow.
who I had no idea who that was. And a lot of people in the orchestra didn't. On that program was Ride of the Valkyries, which took me probably 30 years to learn, but that was my first concert there. And it's 4 pages of solid notes. In fact, you have to tape it together because you can't even turn the page.
Wow.
I don't get to play the fun trombone things. I get to play all the, all the noodle notes. So that was pretty frightening. But I remember just being very excited about it. And in December of that first year, my flute teacher happened to be principal at the time. Chris came 2 years later, and we got to play the Brandenburg 4 together. So that was pretty special. So I got put in the spotlight pretty early on for that. So that was a memorable first season, certainly. But I'm just astounded at the number of guest artists, conductors that I listen to Blue Lake constantly, and very frequently, oh, they were in Grand Rapids. I played with that person. I played with, just incredible talents. In the early days, we did a concert with Beverly Sills. Of course, there was the Kathleen Battle for an anniversary here. She came. Isaac Stern was here. Last year we did, or earlier this season, we did Itzhak Perlman. I mean, Yo-Yo Ma many, many years ago. just incredible artists that we've been so lucky to have here in Grand Rapids. That's kind of fun for me when I listen to the radio. I would say a majority of the people they talk about have been here. So those are good memories for me. And especially a very fun memory for me were the 2 concerts that Peter Schickli came and did a Pops concert with us in his PD Bach persona. Music is emotional, but music can be very funny too, especially in the hands of somebody like that. And I really, really appreciate his talent. And he's a very talented composer in and of itself. One of my favorite flute pieces is called Spring Sonata by Peter Schickli. It has nothing to do with PD Bach. It's a legit piece. But he was very fun with the orchestra too, even backstage. That was a very, very good memory for me. Doc Severinsen was another very fun artist to have. He would hang out with the orchestra backstage and that sort of thing. So yeah, how many hours do you have, Corey? I got 46 years of those.
That's amazing. No, it's so great though, because the reality is our orchestra is so high quality, and we're starting to kind of get more of that. The people realizing like, oh wow, these guys are mean serious business, and we've been here doing this for a while now. We know what's up, and
we hear that a lot from guest conductors and from guest artists that are really surprised for the size town that we are, what we have here. And I'm in the unique position. My first year here was 74, 75, and that was the very first year that we had any full-time musicians. Wow. And that was the start of the DeVos Quartet, and then principal bass and keyboard. Those 6 players were our first full-time players, and then gradually players were added on. I was in the orchestra for 19 years before I was full-time.
Wow.
So I was one of the part-time or per service musicians.
Yeah, but it's so great to see how far we've come, and just even how far we're going, even with Marcelo at the helm right now.
Oh, it's so exciting.
Just seeing all the things we're doing now that are just adding to the legend, so to speak.
Yep.
I've heard you mention Bach a few times. Would you say he's one of your favorite composers? Do you have a favorite composer?
I thought about that question, and my first answer was going to be Ravel, because I heard Rhapsody Espagnole yesterday on the radio. Mm-hmm. And I love La Valse, and I love composers that are so colorful, have such a command of using so many different instruments in the orchestra, and just, it's like a whole crayon box, you know? Mm-hmm. And so I love Ravel. Well, then I think I love composers who write well for woodwinds. Obviously, I'm a little prejudiced. Prokofiev, I mean, who can beat Prokofiev? And his ballet scores, like Romeo and Juliet, is one of my favorites. And you can see them, the sword fight, and I mean, it's so real. His Cinderella score, he just writes fantastic stuff. And then I think, oh well, Stravinsky, that's The Rite of Spring. That's one of my favorites, because I get to play big alto flute stuff on that one. There's the flute section blows up to 5 people. Wow. You know, and so we have this arsenal, this woodwind arsenal in that piece. So I love playing that. And then I think, oh, but when Julian comes and we have the Bach Festival, you know, so I'm all over the map. I can't narrow it down.
That's all right. That's okay. That's awesome though. And I think that's the truth though, as people who are not necessarily in the classical music world. I know myself personally, I came to the orchestra as an administrator, not really knowing classical music at all. And for me, every new season is still like, okay, finding something new to love and something new to discover. And it's great. So.
Well, the thing I love the most about my job is that variety. Every week is different. In fact, within the week, sometimes I have 4 or 5 different folders that we're working on at the same time. It might be an opera rehearsal, and then I have a quintet concert that we go in and play for kids in the school. And then I might go out with Music for Health, where the 2 of us are sent out to Children's Hospital or something like that. And so we'll play duets. I have the Mosaic program. I really enjoyed that. The Symphony has lots of irons in the fire, and I love my Mosaic Scholar kids. And so I have a handful of students through that. the variety every day is completely different. It's fantastic. I love it.
It's so great. Some people have a pre-concert tradition or ritual they do before they go on stage. Do you have anything like that?
I guess what I would say is that it's always on my mind if I know I have a concert that night. So I'm not going to go out and kill myself doing something physical. I let myself be a little bit lazy. I
Sure.
just think about it. Am I going to pull a muscle or, overextend myself? Because you've got to be at your peak at 8 o'clock at night for a couple of hours. So you're not going to exhaust yourself and then show up to work. You've got to be sharp mentally. You got to be sharp physically. So it's always on my mind. Should I be doing this? That kind of thing. I don't have a specific thing other than I usually try to warm up. I play at like 4 or 5 o'clock, so that I feel like I'm warmed up, and I get to the concert very much on time. I don't like to run in, and because you prepare yourself physically, but you prepare yourself mentally too. So I'm just kind of careful with
Sure.
what I do on concert days for sure.
Yeah, and one thing I not everyone thinks about too is that being a woodwind, someone who uses your breathing to play your instrument, you have to have like there's a process there, and you have to have a good set of lungs. You have to be able,
Yep.
exercises probably I'm sure you have to do and all that stuff as well.
No smoking.
This
That's
is
never
great.
interested me.
And I just want to remind folks if you guys have any questions while we're doing this interview, feel free to type them in the chat. We'll talk about them at the end if we have time, and if you guys have any questions. So just feel free to do that. My next question though is kind of a out the left field a little bit, but if there was another instrument in the orchestra that you could play, if which one would you choose?
That's kind of an easy question, actually. Of course, it depends on the piece, but if we're playing a Mahler symphony, I must say I'm jealous of the horn section. They have the greatest parts. Mahler knew how to write for brass, but specifically horns. And I feel sorry for them, though, when we do like a John Williams concert and their tongues are hanging out the bell. So then I'm kind of glad I don't play the horn. But it's such a beautiful instrument. Mary Beth did such a nice job in the instrument discovery little video. That was very sweet. It's just such a beautiful sound. But I still wouldn't trade it for mine.
Yeah, and you say the brass, but you got to give props to the brass because I think a couple of years ago we had where one weekend we were doing a Mahler symphony, and then the next weekend we were doing a Harry Potter concert, and yeah, those John Williams, Wagner, Mahler, they don't take it easy on the brass.
They don't. And those composers kill us with our fingers.
Yep.
I've never played so many notes as some of those Harry Potter movies. It's unbelievable. It's like 120 pages of solid notes.
Wow, that's amazing. Oh
So
my
when I
god.
practice this, the book is so big, the score is so big that I have a cheat sheet and I just write down, I keep a list of pages I absolutely can't play, ones that need work, but I'm kind of close, so that I don't waste any time and I just go to hit the pages that I need to spend extra time with, because it's just the number of pages is overwhelming. And then I can't complain to a first violin player, that's for sure, because their score is probably twice as big as mine.
Mhm, for sure.
It's a lot of work, and we only get our music usually 2 weeks ahead of time. So sometimes I have 6, 7, 8 folders that I'm preparing, and if one of them is Harry Potter, it gets a lot of attention.
There you go. So obviously you love classical music. It's a part of your life every day. You like pop stuff. Is there anything non-symphonic or chamber music wise that you really like? Any certain bands or style of music?
Um, my husband and I were in the same high school class. That's
Okay.
where we met. And so our extremely formative years from high school through early marriage were the 70s. And we're very partial to 70s popular music. We think we grew up in like the best era. So we listened to a lot of Simon and Garfunkel, Seals and Croft, Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, James Taylor. We love Queen. But yeah, we've just listened to all that stuff last week. And then we collect vinyls. We still have some of our old original vinyl from the 70s, but we also tend to collect it at antique stores and that sort of thing. And we listened to Nat King Cole all night last night on a real, turntable. So we love that kind of stuff too.
I love that. I was listening to Sam Cooke. I got my record player
Oh,
here.
awesome.
I was rocking some Sam Cooke earlier this past week,
Yeah.
and all the vinyl is just great. I love vinyl.
Yeah. So we do that a lot.
One question I ask everyone is if uh, obviously you're a professional musician, this has been your life for more than 40 years now. But if you could ever choose another career besides professional musician, anything you'd ever want to try your hand at?
Actually, I got a double major in college, but it was music performance and music education. So I didn't vary it too much. And my intent was, while I was auditioning for orchestra jobs, that maybe I could get a music ed job and teach in the schools. And I did everything but my student teaching, because I got the Grand Rapids Symphony job just before my junior year in college. So I kind of was doing what I really, really wanted to do. So I didn't do my student teaching. So I'm not certified, but that's probably what I would have done. But that doesn't really help, does it? Because it's the same field.
No,
I'm really boring, Corey.
no, you're totally fine, because even like my wife is a music teacher, but because I still say it's a separate thing entirely, even though it's still music focused.
Well, I do love to teach. Like I said, I love my mosaic kids. When my husband and I were first married, I had 50 flute students. About half of them were college, so I could do it during the day. And then the other half were junior high and high school kids, but 50, that's a lot.
Yeah, I do got to give props to the GRS for their education initiatives.
Absolutely.
My first experience with classical music was a fifth grade concert. I don't know if you know that, but it was in the mid '90s, and I was one of the kids in fifth grade at DeVos Hall, and heard music for the first time by an orchestra. So
I
um,
was in fifth grade in 1965, and I was in the Civic Auditorium in the audience.
and
That's how far
there's a
back
lot
I
of
am.
players like you who've been there, and now they're playing with the orchestra.
Yeah.
So for me, somebody who has only been here for a few years working, but getting to be at those shows and seeing those kids be impacted, I'm sure for you it probably puts a little nostalgia in your head while you're going, man, it was so many years ago that I was out there watching an orchestra play and they inspired me. So who am I
Yep.
going to inspire for the next generation?
Yep. Yeah.
I
That's a
love-
great program, the fifth grade. It's wonderful.
It's very special. I got a couple more questions for you. Do you have any hidden talents, any special skills we don't know about?
Really not. The only thing I could come up with is, I'm a pretty good painter, and I don't mean artist. I mean house painting. I'm very particular. I'm really good at cutting in. I think I've
Wow.
painted almost every surface in this. Well, we've lived here for 35 years, so um, I do love painting only when it's necessary. I mean, I don't keep changing colors, and if I like what's on there, I'm not going to do it over again. But I'm pretty meticulous, and I think I do a pretty good job. Once we hired out a painting job, and I could have done it much better. So we won't hire out painting anymore. I won't do that. And I'm pretty good at remembering dates. Like, I don't have to look at a calendar for birthdays. And we probably have more than 50 people in our extended families on both sides. And I know everybody's birthday and what year they were born. And that's kind of weird, isn't that?
That's a superpower, I think so.
Well, and I'm going to remember your son's birthday from now on, because that was yesterday, right?
He's now 3, yes.
Yes, and my daughter turned 36 yesterday. So
There you go.
they share a birthday.
I
So
love it. So my last question for you is, obviously with the state of the world that is right now, things have been crazy. You know, we've had to cancel most of our second half of the season, and then we
don't
can't.
make me cry, Corey.
But my question to you is, what sort of things are you doing right now to stay centered while you're in quarantine?
Um, My husband and I belong to LaGrave Christian Reformed Church, which we love. And they are live streaming their service on Sunday morning. So we take advantage of that. And then the staff has put out daily devotionals, video devotionals. That's been very meaningful. And I was asked to play the end of April. And there's 5 people in this huge church, 2 ministers, a vocal soloist, an instrumental soloist, and the organist. And we're all very far apart. And you play to a completely empty sanctuary. It was very surreal. But I had the extreme pleasure of having Mary Took be the vocal soloist when I played. So we got to play a rudder piece together. That was really special. So our CEO and myself got to play in church. So I really appreciated that. As far as my playing, I've practiced a lot. I've enjoyed, I don't know if you can see that cabinet behind me there. We bought that at an antique show almost right after we got married. And they're like little garage doors that lift up on each other. And so for every little tab you see, there's all music in there.
Wow.
And so the solos are all alphabetized. So I started with the Z's, and I'm up to the H's. I went backwards, but I pull out a whole shelf of music, and I've gone some of the music I haven't seen in years. Some I'm very familiar with, and it was fun to reacquaint myself with it. But when you're practicing so much orchestra music, you just don't get a chance to do that. And so I've really, really enjoyed doing that. I think it's improved my sight reading and my playing, and I'm playing in a really relaxed manner because I don't have a deadline. This doesn't have to be learned by tomorrow. So that's been really enjoyable. I think that's helped keep me centered professionally and kept me playing. So
That's awesome. Yeah, I was about to say, I was going to say that's, from going from having to play this specific piece or learn this specific piece to be able to just kind of revisit why you love music so much. And
exactly.
I'm not saying that being in the orchestra would ever take away your passion for the art form, but
No, but somebody's telling you what to play.
it takes the pressure off you to be able
It
to
does.
enjoy
It does.
and just to go, oh wow, I haven't played this one in a while. Let's pick it up again.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
That's been very helpful to me.
I love it so much. Well, it looks like we're all finished up here. Ruth, thank you so much for being here and talking with me. And even though I feel like I've known you for a while, I know you well. I feel like I know you even better now. It's been great. So,
That's been a lot of fun. Thanks, Corey.
yep. And everyone, thanks for joining us, and we will see you later.
All right.